Hey everybody, it's Sarah Norris
And Carrie Eink
from the Star Institute for SPD, and we're back. We wanted to talk again about just sharing a little bit about a collection of the journeys that we've been witness to with the people that we've worked with, the people we've come in contact with, the people we've learned from. And so today we're really going to be talking about part of managing SPD is not only knowing yourself and your sensory needs, which we kind of talked about already, but also getting to the point where you can figure out who's there for you and maybe who's not, and figuring out what could be a way to get the support you need, because living with SPD can be isolating and you can feel like the only person in the world, and it can be hard to cultivate relationships that help you. So we wanted to unpack that a little bit today.
Yeah, if any of you have read my story, you know that that's a pretty big part of it, was thinking back on my own family and feeling the lack of support through the early years of my sister's diagnosis, and not having the doctors being able to identify a support system for my family. And so it's really an area that hits close for me in my own story. And it's a huge part of what we do at STAR is help families identify who is your child's support system, who is your teen's support system. And then as you become an adult, it really changes. And who is your support system now? Because it might not be a mom or a dad, it might not be a sibling anymore. And so it's really important for us to kind of unpack that today.
And there are certain points where we know that social relationships are really impacted by SPD at certain points. And you may have struggled as a child to make friends on the playground, or to have someone who cared if you wanted to talk about supercomputers for an hour. So sometimes even just finding people who strike a chord with you and that can relate to you, or even if they can't do that, just understand you and accept you. So there are different ways to kind of cobble together these sorts of supports, and sometimes it can be hard to find them, and sometimes you're lucky and they just happen to be part of your life because they're part of your family, they go to school with you, they work with you, etc.
Yeah, so I think when we're talking about supports, I think we're talking about friends as well as professionals, as well as co-workers. So supports can come in a lot of different roles in your life. So I think, we can talk about professional support, and I think that can almost be a stepping stone towards identifying who you are yourself and who is going to be supportive for you, and a relationship, and through friendships, through additional professionals that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, so I think it might be really helpful for us to talk about some of the ways that we've seen people we've worked with find the support that really helps them. And I think really coming from that place of people we work with, ourselves, we need to know what we need to get what we need. And that does take a level of self-understanding that you may not have just innately. And that's where starting with the professional support can be super helpful, because if people are confusing and no one's dependable in your life, and you just can't say, I can always depend on so-and-so, that's a really good sign that you might need some professional support to help you navigate that, figure out what you need so you can advocate for what you need, and you can align yourself with people that meet your needs.
Yeah, and something else we've talked about in the past is your arousal level. So what we know is that if you're consistently in a high arousal level, it's going to be really challenging to be doing those higher level capacities, like problem solving, figuring out how does this person benefit me, how does this person not benefit me. And so going back to the basics and going back to finding somebody who can get you to that safe, calm, focused place to help you kind of think through those things on your own if you have those capabilities.
Absolutely. So, from the professional level, I think we'll start there talking about what we know from what people have accessed through us and what's been helpful. And we're not going to get into specific stories here, so if you've worked with us, you don't need to get nervous. But just thinking about some of the ways that you can get help, whether it's here at STAR or it's in a different clinic or with a different professional, the pathways and the availability of services is pretty similar. It's really just finding the right person who can make you feel heard. And once you have found that person, then figuring out how much you need to be heard and how much you need someone to understand you so that you can understand yourself. So we, at STAR, we have a lot of different ways for people to do that. So we're just going to outline those briefly.
Yeah, the first that comes to my mind, so we have an intake form online. That is our first way to know who you are, and you fill it out online, and that comes to us. Typically, we email you back and say, okay, we want to set up a phone consultation with you. The reason being is that we have hour-long phone consultations with each adult that expresses interest, and we spend an hour talking to you about what is it that is going on right now. What is your mental health history? What's your sensory history? Who are your supports right now, today? Where do you live? What kind of access to services do you have right now? What does your touch system look like to you? What does your auditory system look like to you? And how many times I've heard from people, wow, nobody's ever sat down this long with me to really understand the full story. And SPD, it has a full story. It really rarely to never can be summed up in a 5-minute quick phone call of here's what's going on. And for us to really know if you're on the right track or that you might be on the right track, it really takes an amount of time that not a lot of medical professionals take these days to really hear from you and hear what's going on from all levels.
And so those conversations are sometimes, the only conversations we have, and we're able to say, okay, so it sounds like you need to maybe look at this or read that or work with this person, or, sometimes it can be just that one phone call. So, let's say that there's a very specific challenge that you're experiencing, and maybe you figured out a lot of things in your life, but there's one thing that you just can't seem to get to the root of. That's something that might be a one phone call fix. If it's something that, let's say, has been affecting you your whole life, you've never been able to figure out why it's happening over and over again, and it's becoming really challenging, that's probably not going to get resolved in one phone call. So, beyond that, we do offer some additional consultations for some individuals, and that's generally if they do have some self-understanding. They do know what's going on, and there isn't a lot of questions of, well, I don't know, it seems like there might be more going on than you're aware of, or things like that. But for people that get it, they kind of know, they just need someone that gets it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so talking to them, typically adults go to our online checklist and they say, or they've read books on the matter and they say, that's me, I can check off all those boxes. And so that's typically where we would recommend, an occupational therapy evaluation is the best thing that we know to evaluate and treat sensory processing disorder. But that's not always available, as we've talked about in prior videos, because you might live in an area where there isn't any OTs treating adults, or maybe the OTs in your area just treat kids. And so there actually are other professionals, and finding the right professional who might be a face-to-face person for you to grow that support system with, such as a psychologist, a physical therapist,
even a life coach or a physical trainer.
Or maybe getting your mom on the phone and us talking to your mom or your dad or your spouse and saying, look, we see many individuals just like this, and this is real, and it is from the nervous system, and it is neurological. Even starting there can be a really powerful step in your journey.
Definitely. So I think you bridge from consultation, really the next thing is usually, if there are more questions, would be an evaluation. And sometimes we are able to help people find someone in their local community that can help them at least do some testing, so there's a little bit more clarity of what's going on. Sometimes it's really, they want to come to STAR. They really want to know from us what's going on from our perspective. And so we do have quite a few individuals that come for evaluations here. And we do kind of standalone evaluations where it's just we do the standardized testing, and then we can give some general recommendations of, this is kind of in generalities how people with your profile respond and what sorts of supports are beneficial. But sometimes people have a lot more going on, and it's harder to be able to be cookie cutter about their challenges. And so we do what we call extended evaluations as well. And what that provides us is, yes, we do the standardized testing, but then we actually go down the pathway of figuring out what are the different things that contribute to this, and what are some strategies that might work, and it helps to make them a lot more personalized when we get done at the end of the extended evaluation of saying, this is your next step, and we feel pretty confident about this is what's going to support you moving forward.
Yeah, it really gives us time to do body-based experiments of, does this work? You know, we can write down a lot of recommendations on a paper, but until you actually try it and you're with a supportive therapist who's helping you figure that out, it really makes them so much more rich in nature when we're giving recommendations. So I would say that's the most common recommendation we would give to adults who are able to come to STAR for an evaluation and treatment, is that extended eval, that week-long evaluation. And then with ongoing support, you know, then we might continue checking in with them, maybe doing a booster, which looks like more treatment in a few months after you've tried, you've done the recommendations, you've changed some areas of your life, you're looking for kind of the next step. And so that's typically what treatment would look like here.
And I have some individuals who like to think about it in phases. So like phase 1 is just like, what is going on? And phase 2 is a little bit more of, okay, now we know what's going on, we understand, now what do we do? How do we make this better? And you know, some people, after they've gone through that once or twice, they feel like they can manage, and they are able to identify who's going to help me when I do need help. And sometimes that's a therapist. Sometimes they can identify someone else in their life. And I think that's what we wanted to spend some time unpacking as well, is thinking about who supports you. And it's not just who's going to listen to you or who's going to pay for your therapy, but who in your life understands you and helps you understand yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that these extended evaluations and longer term treatments often, if not always, include our mental health support, psychologists and family counselors as well. And they are such an important part of all adults that we work with, because we know the emotions and sensations, they're all linked together. And so we really can't separate them out in adulthood. So it's so important for us to have them on the case as well, providing recommendations from their standpoint as well.
And even kind of going back to capture the adolescent years too, it's important really in the adolescent years too. It's not just when you become an adult with an adult responsibility that you have adult feelings. So especially with some of the more bright and talented individuals we work with, they have always been sophisticated thinkers, and they always think really deeply. And that can be really hard when their bodies and their development hasn't caught up to those big feelings and thoughts.
Yeah, so I think, you know, in our next video we can talk more about the other types of supports. I think it was really important to outline what types of professional supports are out there. We get a lot of questions about that, and I don't think we've ever spent the time to kind of outline what that looks like at STAR. So let us know if you guys have any questions for us on that process. We'll include some links as well.
And we look forward to talking more about how to find those people in your life moving forward.
Thanks, guys.